Can you elaborate a little bit more on, like, more generally what you think the role of the modern state should be in this kind of technological great reset that we and monetary reset that we're in the midst of? How do you, like, what do you think is the role of the state? What should it actually do for its people? What is the point of it?
Well, developing the economy, for one, that is, a part of its, well, actually should more be a facilitatory role by government, enabling the private sector to thrive and the economy to grow, but not actually controlling it. Um, and in a similar trend, a development plan for the country itself, right? There are certain sectors that correspond to each other or need to be developed, or certain sectors that need government guidance, like energy, for example. Energy you can privatize, but the government still has to make sure that the legal policies and like the legal frameworks are in place to protect consumers. So I think we need to find a balance between policy and regulation that actually enables, a like for example, energy to develop and thrive, and for that sector to grow without it harming consumers. So the role of government in that case would actually be more of a transition for it to be privatized, but with the right policies in place to protect consumers from, just bad actors in that sector. So it would be more of a, I think, facilitative role. And then in sectors like or ministries like education, natural resources, for example, those are things where the government has a negotiating power. But there's no reason why that doesn't have to happen transparently, right? Why do oil contracts, gold contracts, resources that are owned by the entire population, why do they have to be held in closed rooms and have to be, negotiated by one single commission that's representing the government that the people have not elected, for example. So there's certain things where government has to still play a role that can hopefully be automated away later, but that there are things that where, from a policy perspective, from an administrative perspective, you're still going to need some physical form of government that can represent the people. But I see no reason why that couldn't happen in the public eye, right? If you increase transparency over, for example, utility companies, their financing, then there is no reason why that cannot, work to the benefit of the people. And I think specifically because our country is so small, private sector is fairly small as well. Our GDP is 3.2 billion. So you can actually enable that private sector to thrive off of, for example, just the oil income without any government influence whatsoever. So I really believe that we should decrease government overreach and go move and this it differs per specific ministry, because education will need a completely different overhaul than for example healthcare is not automated at the moment. There are systems that can automate healthcare, and hospitals are state owned, but they don't even have basic medical supplies right now. Like, you can't get an IV bag. You need there are no beds available in one of the hospitals. So it's a dire situation at the moment. And private hospitals can, for example, become very commercial and bad, like in the U.S., where it's become, you know, like the margins are just insane that they charge for example, insulin. And just when you go to the hospital, for example, the bill you get, that is your savings sometimes, right? Or more than your savings. Sometimes you need to remortgage your house just to be able to afford your medical expenses. So to avoid something like that, for example, happening here, because the cost of healthcare is fairly low, and there's no reason for it to be sky high, but there's no reason for it to be bad either. Like, you can improve in sectors like that. Same goes for healthcare. But there's no need for government involvement in that either. Something as our natural resources. Right now, you have a lot of natural resources that have been given to, the vice president or to their family members, and those are mining gold that is actually belongs to the population of this country. Um, so restructuring that sector, specifically the gold sector, that would create a lot, like a direct source of income that would increase, like it would immediately create more wealth for the entire population if it's not just in the hand of a corrupt few. But then you need systems also, to make sure that that it actually is going to the population. But I see again no reason why that can't happen transparently and publicly. If you're not planning on doing any corruption, nobody on our team is incentivized to need some kind of, I don't know, additional income coming from this, because honestly we do well enough as entrepreneurs on our own, and we can probably earn more than you would in SRD. I think a minister right now makes, I think, 1,200 US if you convert it to US dollars. So it's not, we're not incentivized. That is not why we're doing this. We have a love of this country. We still like to see it develop. We have hope in its future, and we see how bad it is right now. Like everybody on the team is fighting against corruption at some point, and has been in the media at some point about corruption. So we want to see change, and I think we all we're all very innovative. We're, technocrats. We prefer to see solutions that use just the latest technology. Like, what is the use of all of this inefficiency and bureaucracy? And I think by that, we're also improving our own lives, and by extension, everybody else's in the country. But I think primarily it's also what just annoys us as, a younger generation that grew up on both not having computers, but then, I was 3 years old playing around with, assembling a PC back then, and grew up on DOS. So we're a generation that has experienced both, right? So we want the efficiency that the internet has to offer, but we do want, like, a bit more structure and transparency in it as well. Um, yeah, I think we've just reached an inflection point in this country, and I think just world and society as a whole, and it just feels like everything up till now, and even like this last 6 years or this last decade, like everything has been, a decade of work that is now coming into play, and finally, coming into execution, and it's just like everything is falling into place. Even other political parties, even, influential people here in the country, even just the amount of support that I'm receiving, is just, it's crazy how everything is just kind of like kismet happening because it should.
Right time, right place, right people, right ideas, right technology. Kind of a beautiful confluence coming together. Uh, yeah,
Right
exactly.
epoch.
Exactly.